All right, so very good evening to all of you. We'll be starting our virtual expert session. And for today's session, we have Professor Wolfgang Maennig. He is a distinguished economist at the University of Hamburg's Department of Economics in Germany. His expertise includes macroeconomics, international trade, and sustainable economic development, contributions of which have significantly influenced both academic research and policy discussion on global economic challenges. He has published extensively in leading journals and books on topics such as economic globalization and financial stability, earning recognition for his ability to connect theoretical insights with practical applications. In addition to his academic role, he collaborates with international organizations, providing expertise on pressing economic issues and mentoring students to foster interdisciplinary research in modern economics. The topic which he will be conveying is Olympic city selection, bid process, and strategic planning for India. I request everyone to give him a big round of applause before he starts his session. Professor Wolfgang Maennig, sir, please.
Yeah. Hello, India. Dear ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, thank you. So thank you very much for inviting me to your important conference. I'm very happy to be with you. I have to admit from the very beginning that I am biased towards India. I'm a fan of India. I spent a lot of private holidays in India. The last was some weeks ago. My holidays, for my Christmas holidays, I spent in India, in your beautiful country. So we do have only a limited time to spend, and it's quite a complex issue. And I want to structure the presentation in four, let's say, parts. First of all, it will be short, the Olympic bid situation, which might be known to you, but which I want to interpret in a certain way. Then I'm coming to the bid process, which has been changed. It's also very short and not in the focus of the presentation. And then the most important part is the determinants of success and Indian strategy before I summarize. So right in the moment, we have 4 confirmed bids for the Games of 36. It's Nusantara, the new capital city of Indonesia, which is right now in construction, so I can't give you the population side. There is Istanbul from Turkey, there is Santiago from Chile, and there is India, as far as I know, else Ahmedabad or Delhi. And what is outstanding in the case of India, which is what is very attractive for the Olympic family, is that you have the largest population size in the world, and you have the largest urban population in the world, which is important for, let's say, the marketability of the Olympic issues. Also, both of your cities are large enough to organize the Olympic Games, as you will see. And what is impressive to the rest of the world is a very strong growth performance, which you will see is a decisive factor for the Olympic bid success. I am aware that there are other cities thinking about the Games, bidding the Games for 36, but in the truth, I do think that the probability that these cities will come up with a bid is quite low. So please allow me to concentrate on those cities which have confirmed their bids. I also know that some people regard the Games for 36 and for 40 as substitutes. I know that some cities are speculated if they don't get the Games of 36 and then may go for 2040. Also in these respect, I will not consider the potential bids for 2040. And I think there's a lot of speculation. So, for example, my home city, Berlin, which is in the internet regarded as an official bid. No, there is no official bid, and I'm unsure whether we will bid. So let's come to the second issue, the bid process. As you know, the Olympic host city selection process has been reformed heavily in last years. And it is important to know why it has been changed. In the earlier process, cities like Ahmedabad, some 16, 14, 12 years before the Olympic Games, thought about bidding for the Games. And they got into contact with the IOC. In almost all cases, they accepted such cities as so-called applicant cities. And then the applicant cities had to deliver lots of documents and information. And some, 9 years before the Olympic Games, the IOC then decided to concentrate of a maximum number of some 5 cities which were allowed to go into the further competition, and they got the title of a candidate city. By the way, these cities, whether applicant city or candidate city, they spent a lot of money for expensive consultants. In the end, some 7 years before the Olympic Games, there was a showdown election, which you may see here in the table, which shows you that even that really very famous cities of all over the world applied and were fighting against each other in the showdown election for the Olympic city winner. The problem was there was at least three large problems with the old bidding process. First of all, there were too many losers. As you may see, very attractive cities like New York and Chicago, they lost. And maybe Chicago was one of the cases where the IOC finally understood we cannot go further like that. What happened? So the meeting was in Copenhagen. Barack Obama, the then young president of the United States, just named Nobel Prize winner of Peace, came to Copenhagen, presented the bid of Chicago, and his home city was defeated in the first round and had to go home. That was quite an offense to the United States Olympic Committee, which might be regarded as one of the most important, maybe the most important Olympic committee in the world. So red face, offense, and loser. And there are many other splendid cities which were losers in that respect, which couldn't be, because only one city can win. Second thing is, what we saw is that there are some inconsistencies in voting. So for example, here in the Summer Games of 2008, after Osaka was voted out, we would expect that every city would at least in the second round get as many votes as in the first round. But in many cases that didn't happen. So for example, here Istanbul in the fourth round got 17 votes, and in the second round only 9. And the same happened to New York and also to Tokyo, which got only 20 votes in the second round. So it's we call it inconsistency. Some of the economists call it strategic voting. Anyway, it seems to be that some IOC members don't really tell the truth of their priorities when they vote, which is a problem. You should reveal your true preferences. Otherwise, the competition and the voting process is a bit biased. And third problem is the high bidding cost. It culminated in the bid of Tokyo 2016. Reports say that Tokyo spent $100 million. Be aware, it's not the cost of organizing the game, it's just the cost of the bidding process. So the IOC knew that you cannot go further with that process where the most splendid city of the world tried to be better than the other one, have better marketing, better PR, better experts, better proposals, nicer stadiums, etc., etc. They needed a reform, and I will stop for the moment. Just there are two more remarks which can be seen from the table, which might be important later on. First of all, there might be benefits of repeated bids. As you will see, I think that you are the top favorite to get the Games of 36. But in case you are not getting it, look at some cases like Paris, which bid several times, and even more so, Istanbul has bid for the Olympic Games since 2000 ever and ever again. So with Istanbul, you will have an experienced competitor. And in earlier publications, you could find the opinion that no city in the world and no country in the world ever won in the first attempt. They always had to run up several times. I'm not sure for India. I think that you will win in the first instance. So what is about today's host city decision? What are the elements and what are the decisive factors? There is a publication which I name here. It's a short web page, and I urge you to read it word by word, to concentrate on every word. Every word is important. Everything explains what the Olympic family is expecting from Olympic host cities. I can concentrate only on some very few of them. First of all, the Olympic host city is now invited to partner with the Olympic Committee. Indeed, you do not need any more international experts. Your experts are the members from the IOC, the staff from the IOC. They know the best what the members of the IOC want you to develop. They will help you. They will partner you to help you to develop a vision and a plan which makes sure that you are happy and the Olympic family is happy. And have a look, secondly, which makes your local population happy. So which makes sure that the national support and the local support is on a high level. That's very important for the Olympic family. And then there is the important factor that the IOC wants to make sure that the Olympic Games contribute to the long-term strategic goals of the Olympic movements. So what is that? What is the long-term strategic goal of the Olympic movement? Here, that's the web page where you can find it. And I highlighted the most important thing. The Olympic Games shall help to develop sustainable sport worldwide, and especially in the home country. And to leverage, and that's the second very important thing, the fourth very important thing, to inspire the power of the athletes. Today, in the focus of the IOC, of the Olympic families, athletes play a much larger role than beforehand. So make sure that you involve your athletes. And fifth, there's the last one of the last sentence on that webpage is Olympic hosts are chosen in a vote by IOC members. Yes, it is true, but yes, it's not the whole story, because there is no more showdown election for the IOC Assembly. They cannot choose anymore among some 5 cities. They get one proposal by the IOC Executive Board, and they can vote yes or no, nothing else. So how does the IOC Executive Board come up? The Executive Board has founded a so-called Future Host Summer Commission for the 36 Olympic Games with those members here. These will be your partners. These personalities and their staff, they are your expert to develop a good proposal for the Olympic family. This commission, the members of the commission are in a permanent communication with the IOC Executive Board. And once upon a time, and no one knows when that will happen, the IOC, the Future Hosts Commission, will come to the conclusion that hopefully Ahmedabad is a good host city. They will communicate that to the IOC Executive Board, and then the IOC Executive Board will have a decision and publish it worldwide. And some months later, the IOC Assembly will vote on, hopefully, Ahmedabad. I will come back to the importance of the Future Host City Commission. So let me now turn to the question of which are the determinants of success for an Olympic bid. And I allow myself to concentrate on a study by Mr. Vierhaus and me. What did we do? We collected the data of some 200 time series, all the data which somehow we thought could play a role in determining the success. How did we select the data? Well, easy. We looked to the so-called IOC questionnaires for host cities. All the data which were demanded from the host cities or the candidate cities, we took serious, because obviously the IOC took seriously data. And then there had been previous studies on the importance of the determinants of Olympic Games, and we included them as well. So we had some 200 time series, and in the end, with quite a complicated statistical method, in the end, only these 10 determinants have been found to be statistically significant. So the first thing is, which you may see, you must have a large urban population. Easy for India. By this determinant, you are a strong favorite. Second, you should have a strong GDP growth, easy for India. Third, you should not have any disputes with the IOC. In the truth, why was it that Chicago and New York were dismissed in the first round? Because at that time there was a dispute between the IOC and the United States Olympic Committee on the share of the IOC, which part of the revenues of the USOC of TV rights and marketing should go to the international family. The USOC did not solve the problem, so they voted out. Don't have a dispute with the IOC, but I'm sure you have understood. Fourth, and you see that here, there is a preference for countries which have a good development in political rights and democracy. And I know all the problems with these kinds of indicators. I know that there might be bias. I'm aware of that. I have to tell you that right in the moment, Chile has a higher recognition of its democracy process, but Chile, for other purposes, which came up with the first table, in my view, doesn't have a real chance. You are at least significantly more democratic than Turkey, and we know that India is the largest democracy on earth. So you have a good review here as well. Let me turn back to the table, and now I'm going to visualize it because it's instructive. First of all, we have found out that cities with less than 2.5 million inhabitants don't have a chance, which you see by the steep structure of that curve. Yeah? Easy for India. Second, we found out that you must have at least some 5 large stadiums in your country, not in the host city. I think it's easy for India, I couldn't check. Third, you shouldn't have had the Olympic Games for a long time. This graph shows the longer you didn't have the Olympic Games, the larger your probability. India never had the Games. The largest population in the world never had the Olympic Games. I think that's one very important argument why, in my perception, you are the favorite. And fourthly, countries which recently organized the World Cup also have had a better chance to win the Olympic Games. You might be astonished, but think about Atlanta 96 and the World Cup in 94 in America. Think about the Olympic Games in Rio and in 2016 and the World Cup in 2014 in Brazil. And there are many other instances. Do I recommend India to apply for the World Cup? You must not do that. But maybe organizing the World Cup is only a proxy variable in being experienced in organizing international sporting events, especially sporting events in the Olympic sports. So India, think about applying and organizing World Championships. May I start with rowing because I'm an Olympian rower, and all the other nearly 30 Olympic sports. Think about it. Apply for these, and I'm sure you will get it, and there will be additional trust for India to be able to organize such sport event. Last but not least, and very important, is that you should have at least a two-third of your population should support the bid. At one moment in time, and they will not tell you about it, the IOC will have a poll in your population in Ahmedabad. And they were asked the people whether they are in favor or not. What we found out empirically and what is stressed here in that graph, there is not a single instance where a city was named Olympic City where not at least 2/3 of the population were in favor of it. Let's have, to clarify the argument, Tokyo has bid for the Games of 2016. At that time, else in the applicant city phase, but also in the candidate city phase, the majority was in favor, but they were far from 60%. So Tokyo didn't win the bid. For 20 or 21, in the applicant cities, they didn't have the majority, but in the candidate city phase, they had 70% of support, and they got the Games. And you will not find any Olympic city where the support was less than 2/3. So you must make sure that you have the support of your population. Why is it? Why is it so important for the Olympic family to know that your population is supporting us? Because we from the Olympic family, we are a bit shocked. We are shocked that in the last, now 55 years, since 69, in only 7 cases, public referenda in the population, the local population, went out positively. In only 7 cases, the population in these cities voted in favor of hosting the Olympic Games. And in truth, it's not really 7 cases. Here, Oslo was in favor of it, but some very few weeks later, the support in the Norwegian population tumbled because the IOC treated a certain athlete in a certain way, and the Norwegian public doesn't like it. So the Norwegian government had to withdraw the bid. And in Munich, 2018, yes, there was a support, but because we didn't get the games of 2018, we applied again for 2022. We had a referenda in all 4 communities which were involved in the plans. And what you do see here is negative in all 4 communities. And Germany withdrew its application. I do not go through the details here, but what you do see, only some 5 or 7 positive referenda and much more negative referenda. I do not go into the details. This is a shocking, a devastating news for the Olympic family. It's making us sad. We think we have the nicest, the most exciting event in the world, with the most ambitious people of the world, with talented persons of the world, the youngest person in the world. What can you get better than the Olympics? But we do see that the support for the people has diminished in the last time, at least in the last 50 years. So let me come to an interim summary. So what has been proven by empirical econometric studies. First of all, you need a large urban population, no problem for India. You need a strong growth performance, no problem for India. No disputes with the IOC. I didn't hear about it. No problem for India. You are the largest democracy of the world. You are in a good position. You have large host cities, be it Ahmedabad or be it Delhi, no problem for you. You never had the Olympics. Very strong argument for India. You have enough stadiums, I suggest. So the only thing where is a question mark, check whether you have enough experience with international sports and maybe develop a strategy to apply for the Olympic Sports Federation for hosting those World Championships in India in the next years. And the last thing, I mentioned it again and again, make sure that you have the support of your population. So that's the empirical, hardcore statistical evidence. And of course, I believe my study, but nevertheless, I have to say that there might be additional arguments which you have to make sure that you cover them. First argument, I would call it human resources. And I'm a little bit on slippery slope. So I would say, think about the importance of background. Think about pedigree. Think about coming from the same stable. What do I mean? Here you find the already mentioned future host commission for the games, the composition and the background of the personalities which are in the commission. First of all, with the exception of the chairwoman, every one of them has a very strong background in international sports. Some of them are presidents of international sports federation here, triathlon or equestrian or the Paralympic Committee. Some of them are president of their national Olympic committees. And some of them are even earlier Olympic champions and medal winners, 3 of them. So again, think about my remembrance, think about the athletes. If you want, you must somehow convince these athletes and these members of the international sporting community that India is good for the international sporting development. I give you some examples how Paris 24 and Los Angeles 28 did. For example, here's a report when President Bach, by the way, an Olympic champion of 76, when he went to Los Angeles for inspection, the United States Olympic Committee made sure that, of course, there had been important officials like the mayor and ministers. It is important, yes. But they made sure that President Bach, the Olympian, was accompanied by other gold medalists like Carl Lewis, Nadia Comaneci, etc., etc. It's because it's in all kinds of human milieus. For you, it's important to meet the president or the mayor or important persons, but you give a certain trust to persons which you might know or who have the same background as yourself. And bring it even forward. Think about the Paris Olympic Bid Committee. They had a chairman, Bernard Lapassé. He was the president of World Rugby for 8 years. And Los Angeles Bid Committee, yes, they had Cassie Wasserman as a chairman, no real sporting background, but they made sure that the vice chairs went to people which were magic, which were very important in Olympic history of the United States and of the Olympic family in total. Yes, so coming from the same stable, making the people of the commission, of the Future Host Commission, believe that their counterparts, the people who they discuss the Indian application, are trustworthy, not only the ministers and the mayors, but also the other people from the Olympic Indian family who accompany them. Second, very important, we know that statistically there is a home advantage by host countries. So, for example, here you can see with Spain, Spain did not perform too well before the Olympic Games in 1992. Then they excelled, and what was really good with them, they stood on a high performance level even after the Games. There had been other cases. Sydney, for example, in London, there's always this home advantage effect. In some cases, like Greece, for example, unfortunately, and the Olympic family is sad about it, there was a home advantage already in the run-up of the Olympic Games, but afterwards, they were not able to make it sustainable and durable. Unfortunately, now the Greek athletes are back to where they have been beforehand. Paris excelled in the home advantage. They had been very strong and they built it up for a longer time. Japan did quite well, and you do see how they built it up. And even after in the Paris Games, they had been on a higher level than beforehand. So yes, the members of the Future Host Commission are athletes and sport people from other nations. They know, and the Olympic family knows, the more medals Indian athletes will win, the less medals the athletes of other nations will win. We do not have a problem with that. We want the Indian athletes to win more medals. That's one of the reasons why people think it's about time to give the Olympic Games to India. And yes, India did better. Concentrate please on the blue line. India did better in the last Olympic Games, from Rio to Paris. But again, India has a share of some 20% of the world population, but India only won 0.6 of the medals. So I have every respect to the performance of the Indian athletes, but may I say that in my view, there is room to become better. You must make sure, you must convince the International Olympic family that you will use the Olympic Games in India to make better the sports system in India, the elite sports system in India, that you will develop programs which will make sure that many Indian athletes will be on the podium. It is important because we think in sustainable development. We want you and we want India to become stronger in sports. The Canadians developed such a program. They called it Own the Podium. The Australians called it Operation Gold. You will find such programs with each and every Olympic host. You must develop a credible program how you will, in the run-up of the Olympic Games, make your athletes better. Otherwise, an important part of convincing the Olympic family is missing. Care about the success of your athletes. Third, doping and corruption. A very sad point. But the Olympic family had been shocked, had been devastated, had been nearly destructed by huge scandals of doping and corruption in the last 30, 40 years. I don't have time to name them all. I only remind you, Ben Johnson won the sprint, the 100 meter sprint in Seoul 1988. 2 days, so one of the most important events, of course. 2 days later, he was tested positively for steroids. They took the gold medal. The hugest scandal in doping history started. The credibility of the Olympic family was heavily attacked. We had to have corruption scandals in the Olympic family. Think about the Olympic Winter Games in 2002 in Salt Lake City. They had been corrupted. 10 members of the IOC had been thrown out because they took advantage of their IOC position. Scandals like that, and they didn't end in 22. You know that there's a corruption scandal in Japan right now for the Olympic Games. You know that there was a Russian doping scandal. We cannot accept any further risks from doping and corruption. And Ahmed Mawad, we have a problem. India is not performing well in the doping statistics. Have a look to the World Anti-Doping Agency report. India is the one nation in the world which is having the largest percentage of doping offenses in the world. More than 3% of your athletes had been positively tested. It's unacceptable. Yes, we want successful Indian athletes, but the Olympic family is also caring for their health. And we want to make sure that your athletes will have a good life also after the Olympics. So we don't want doping scandals in India. Imagine you are the host in 36 for the games, and some, 5, 6, or 10 Indian athletes are disqualified because they have been tested positively. That will be so bad. Not only for India, not only for the athletes, it will be bad for the Olympic family. So you should try to start immediately a program together again, I say it again and again, with your partners from the IOC and from WADA. Think about what can you do about sorry to say, but we are at a university, there is an obvious problem with doping in India. You have to do something about it. The other thing is corruption. Yes, yeah, I know again the problems of all corruption indicators, but World Bank is renowned in large parts. What I can say is Chile is better placed than you, but you are in position number 2. You're better than Indonesia and Turkey might be the most severe competitor to you. Nevertheless, India, think about, you have bright people. You have so bright people from law, from economics, from pedagogy, from sports. Why don't you develop programs to fight doping and corruption in international sports? I'm sure you have very innovative people. If you contribute to our problems worldwide of doping or corruption, that would be most helpful in your application. And we would be really thankful if you could deliver such a thing. Argument is a fourth determinant, which had not been tested empirically. Yes, maybe the future host commission will come up with the demand for economic impact studies and other studies. Yes, they will come up. Maybe even for economic studies. In the truth, you will not have to commission it. You will not have to spend money on it, because it's for sure that many Indian banks and also Indian academics will turn out with economic impact studies. That was true in each and every instance of all World Cups, of all Olympic Games. Here, I give you the example of the World Cup 2010 in South Africa, which is also a BRICS nation. So it's only a part of these studies. They are all more or less the same, with more or less the same simple mathematics. The argument was that when they have the World Cup in South Africa, some 200,000 or even 400,000 overseas tourists would come to South Africa and would spend their money in hotels, in restaurants, in car rental, etc., etc. So that was easy economics, and they calculated that this will lead to an increase in the GDP of South Africa of 1.5% or 1%. That's huge. I gave you the table. India right now has a percentage growth of 5%. It's the most dynamic economy in the world. Having an additional 1.5% is, for an economist, just not credible. And even if you have short-run descriptive tests afterwards, you cannot verify these estimates. So, for example, South Africa just has 3 airports which have international arrivals, and they are very transparent for each day which airplanes are coming from international destinations. So we took the data, we counted the number of airplanes which landed for a certain period in South Africa. We even accounted for the size of the airplanes. And you can do a lot of complicated statistics, but it's obvious from this graph. In the time of the World Cup, between mid of June and mid of July 2010, there was no significant increase in the number of airplanes landing to South Africa. There's no possibility of a huge increase in the number of overseas visitors coming to South Africa. Yeah. So in this case, the argument is you don't have these significant effects. There are some cases where it even turned out worse. And one of the most prominent cases is London 2012. London is, of course, one of the major tourist spots in the world. They have a lot of tourists normally. What they experienced is that in the third quarter of 2012, they had less international arrivals than in 2011 and 2010. Less arrivals, and even worse. What they experienced is that many British people ran away from the Olympics, whatever reasons they had. Maybe because they didn't want the noise, they didn't want the congestion, whatever. We call it the carnival effect because in some countries, and also Germany, some people think the carnival is very beneficial for the economics of the city, but what we measure is, yes, there are coming some people for spending the carnival events, but many people are running away. So in the net result, there's no positive effects from such events. Yeah? So that's simple descriptive statistics. Out there, and you academics, you will easily find it, and I cannot go through the table because I don't have enough time. But there is a huge evidence now from good authors worldwide with nice econometrical statistics, which show that in the end, and I just concentrate on the conclusion of my colleagues Bardi and Matheson, who argue that in most cases, the Olympics are a money-losing proposition for the host city. Don't think that you will earn money. That is not the argument why you should go for the Olympics. You should have other arguments, being host, being welcoming the international world, presenting yourself as a welcoming people, presenting your beautiful city, everything else, but don't think that you will earn money. Bardi and Matheson had been very strict. I'm a bit less strict, and my publications, some of them are named here. I argue, well, we cannot measure any positive effects, but we also cannot measure any negative effects. It's insignificant. In a more recent study by some colleagues of me, we tested the empirical test strategy. We tested whether the way the econometricians do the tests are correct, and we ended with the conclusion it is possible that the economically relevant employment effects, in this case of the World Cup 2006 in Germany, cannot be detected with the aid of the statistical tests considered. In the audience, those who are experts on statistics, you know the discussion about retire significance. There is a certain share of scientists from pharmacy, medicine, but also economics, which is getting doubts about the usual significance tests. Fifth thing, and I think it's important for your conference as well, urban development and urban economics. Yes, we from the Olympic family, we felt very well for some decades to see that when we came to the Olympic host cities, they made themselves very beautiful. They built new stadia, beautiful stadia. They renovated the infrastructure. They renovated the houses. So we saw that we are important to the host cities. They made themselves beautiful when we came to their cities. Some of them even developed the idea for so-called iconic constructions in order to place the name of the city on the map of the world. There are many examples. Allow me to name the German example of the Olympic Stadium of '72, and very well known is the bird nest of Beijing 2008. By the way, Swiss architects which did it, yeah. And then there was a culminating point, and which was maybe at the least, the last and very least, think why the Olympic family changed their mind. That was the Olympic Stadium designed by Zaha Hadid. It was confirmed, and only when the projected cost of the stadium surpassed $1 billion, the Tokyo government and the national government of Japan said, no, stop it. And they went to a more modest, more normal stadium, which is sustainable in the way that it can be used later on as well. You may know that both the stadiums in Munich as well as in Beijing now have real problems to find events which could take place in the stadiums. So we liked it for a certain time, for some decades, that there was a competition among the Olympic candidate cities, being better, having better stadiums, nicer stadiums, better infrastructure, nicer airports, etc., etc., etc. But then we learned that maybe there's a connection between this competition and, let's say, the resistance in the public against Olympic Games. Because even people who never studied any lecture on economics, they understand that somehow every public rupee which is spent on a stadium cannot be spent again, let's say, for hospital and education. So the old competition, being more beautiful, being more important, felt on our feet. We liked it for a certain time, but then we understood that maybe the resistance against the Olympics was also due to the ever and ever increasing costs of the Olympics. And in fact, it were less the stadiums which had been expensive, but it was the urban redevelopment. Many of the candidate cities and the host cities misunderstood the Olympic Games as a tool for urban regeneration. And there's hardly anything which is more expensive in the world than urban regeneration. In many cases, we, the Olympic family, have been blamed for being too expensive. It wasn't the Olympics. It was the misunderstanding of the Olympics to use it for urban regeneration processes. So right now, the Olympic family is becoming a bit more, let's say, stubborn. Now we are more reluctant. We want to make sure that whenever you build a stadium, whenever you build a new airport, it must have a reason besides the Olympics. You must be able to show us that you can use it afterwards. You must be able to show us that it is not for the Olympics, but that you need it anyway. Otherwise, they will not accept it. So let me conclude, and maybe allow me to also name some missing issues and to have an outlook. First, in my personal view, India is the top favorite to host the Olympic Games on 36. And I do not say this because I'm presenting here. I would say the very same if I would present elsewhere. You will win the Games. But please don't delay your decision for the host city too long, because it shows a certain uncertainty. It might be interpreted by the Olympic family that you're not sure whether Delhi or Ahmedabad is a good Olympic host, whether both are good Olympic hosts or none of them is a good Olympic host. So decide as early as you can, and then put all the support of your national population behind that Olympic bid. By the way, later on, you will be able to check whether your strategy, which you developed together with the IOC family, is successful. There are bidding agencies where you can bid on the probability that you will win. Check it up. Right now, I try to check it up. There is no betting on the host cities of 36, but in the recent and near year, it will come. Second, and I think it's most important, you must struggle for local and national support. I do not know enough about your population and the way of thinking. I know a bit. You know much better, so I cannot advise you. You must think about how you can make sure that your local and your national population supports the bid. If you don't have 2/3 of support, you will not be an Olympic city. Third, and I'm really undecided whether number 2 or 3 is the real number 2 or 3. Use the offer of the Olympic family. Use the Future Host Commission. They are your partners. You do not need highly paid international experts anymore. Use them and their staff. They know everything which is important to the Olympic family. And because I told you about the background of the members of the Future Host Commission, they are all heavily connected to the international sports. Integrate your Indian members of the Olympic family. Whenever you have a visit of the Future Host Commission, make sure that your Olympians, especially your Olympian medal winners, are part of the event. Invite them, fly them in. Make sure that they sit at the same table as the members of the commission. Make sure that your Indians, which have experience in guiding international sport federations, are part of the bid. Invite them. Make sure that they meet the Future Host Commission. Fourth, you must convince the international family that the Olympic Games in India will be to the benefit of the international sport, but even more important, will be beneficial to the sport in India and will be important for the medal success for elite sport in India. You must convince us that the Olympic Games in 36 in India will help the Indian athletes to become better and more successful. Develop, create a good plan together with the IOC. Create a good name which somehow expresses what you want to achieve. You want to have more Indian athletes on the podium. Very important. Fifth, avoid doping and corruption scandals by all means. I allowed myself, we are at a university, we can speak open up frankly. I allowed myself to mention that India has a problem with the doping statistics. You must become better. For practical reasons again. If 36 you have the games and Indian athletes are sent home, that's so bad for the international family. It's also very bad for you. We cannot expect the probability of something happening like that. So be aware that there is a problem. Communicate frankly about this problem with the IOC Commission and start the communication with them of how to develop a program to fight the doping statistics of India. There are a lot of experts in the international family. There is WADA. They will be happy to communicate with you. There are so many experts from, again, medicine, law, economics, which can help you. But you have very many bright people in your own country. You may be able to do it alone. And if you will come up with innovative programs in fighting doping and corruption worldwide, not only in India, we will be so thankful to India. So think about it, whether you can have that innovative work. 6, of course, whenever there is a requirement for certain studies, like economic impact studies, you have to fulfill it. Yeah? But please, don't exaggerate. Don't be too much boosters. You have so many smart academics. They easily Google the literature. They easily will find out that it never happened in the past, that the Olympic Games are not a money-making machine. It's very good for the home city. It's very good for the home country for many, many reasons, which I couldn't cover in all details here. But don't think that you will earn a lot of money. And even if you would do so, you know what? The members of the IOC from Africa, will they be convinced that it's a good argument to give the vote for India if you tell them that you will earn a lot of billions of dollars? No, that's not a good argument to give the vote to India. Number 7, urban development. Again, we from the Olympic family, we enjoyed for decades that the Olympic host cities made themselves so beautiful that they tried to overrun themselves, and more beautiful stadia, more beautiful Olympic village, more beautiful airports, etc., etc. But we have understood that now there is huge resistance against having the Olympics. And we are trying to figure out why, and there are publications on that. And I refer to the reference lists, which are very much biased, by the way, yeah, which are mostly my publications on that. But you will find other materials in the reference list of my publications. So we from the Olympic family, we have learned that maybe misinterpreting or misusing the Olympic Games as a tool of urban regeneration is not a good idea. The costs of urban regeneration are immense, and we have been blamed for too high costs of the Olympic Games. That, to a large extent, had not been the Olympic Games. It had been the urban regeneration. So please separate between the two issues. Of course, you must have urban regeneration and you must have urban development, but make always clear these costs are for the Olympics and these costs are for urban development. 7, and I couldn't go into the details here because I didn't have enough time. Use private financing. Don't rely on public financing only. May I mention that 85 Los Angeles was 100% privately financed. May I mention that Atlanta 96 was 100% privately financed. May I mention that Los Angeles 2028 will be 100% private financed. This is not an argument that India should struggle for 100% financing. So for example, in Germany, my population, my people wouldn't like, for different reasons, they wouldn't like a 100% privately financed Olympic Games. They want the politicians to have a say. So they don't want the Olympic Games to be an issue of investors only. Yeah? But there's a certain degree which you have to find out yourself, which is optimizing the financing. And I think the main focus of finding the optimal degree of private financing is to minimize public resistance. 9th and last, when we come to the Olympic Games, we are members of the Olympic families. We want to feel good. We want to feel welcome. We want to feel that your population is happy to have the Olympic Games, and they are happy to host the Olympic family. We want to make sure that the Olympics in 36 in India are a splendid, vivid, enthusiastic, festival, colorful, welcoming event. If you convince us, and you will be able, if you convince us that you can do that, you must win the Olympic bid. Good luck.
What an insightful lecture we had today. We'll be moving forward with question and answer. Anyone, if you wish to ask questions.
We need the money. So that leads to my query. India is the 5th largest economy, but its per capita income is significantly below the global average. So what economic model or strategies you will suggest that will minimize the financial burden and ensure benefits to its diverse population, especially the lower income group?
Yeah. So again, you Indians, you know better. Again, my advice is don't rely too much on international experts. Rely on your wisdom and rely on the most closest communication with the IOC Future Host City Commission members and their staff. And regarding your question, I know the problem. I know that we didn't have too many countries from, let's say, emerging or growing countries in the world. We had Mexico, for example, in 68. But in general, it had been all, let's say, set up and maybe satisfied economies in the world. Yeah, maybe China was also an exception in 2008. But this is also triggering us. We understood that the centralization of the Olympic Games to Europe and North America in the past, and maybe Australia, was not a good idea. If we want to go globally, we have to think about Africa, yes, and we have to think, of course, about India with the largest population in the world. Again, I cannot advise you in some short sentence how to make sure that you will have the support of the Indian population. And I know that your population is diverse. I have been very often to India. There's everything in India, from the brightest persons in the world to poor people I know very well. But how to address it, how to get their support, sorry, you must answer it. I can only give some few comments. First of all, make sure that you have a modest application. Don't have too much urban regeneration. I forgot one argument why the people, at least in some Western cultures, are against the Olympics, because in our culture, urban generation is something of participation. We have participation rights. Yes, the population in countries and cities like Berlin is used that they have a say on urban development, and they have the fear if the Olympic Games come to Berlin and because of the times, it's a very narrow time span to organize the games. All the rights which the population got in participating and having a word on the urban regeneration are lost. So you have to give them an idea that you will not over-demand the population, that you will make sure that almost everyone is profiting, that you will save. You will have a modest application, not spending too much money at all, and that you will have to try to use private financing as much as you can. Again and again, make sure that your athletes are in the focus of your thinkings. And I think the population, if they get an idea that with the Olympics, you will have a lot of Indian athletes being on the podium, that will be a convincing argument. By the way, but I want to be short. In Germany, when we got the Olympic Games for 72, at that time we were in a competition with Eastern Germany, with the GDR. And we were afraid that we do not win the medals and that East Germany wins the medal. So we thought, what could we do? And that was the start of many sport science faculties in Germany, because beforehand we didn't have it. Since then, we have a decent number of sports science faculties in Germany. So they made sure, it was a clever idea of Willi Daumer at that time, they made sure that academics, students, young persons saw that something positive is happening to them as well.
All right, so do anyone have any questions, please? All right, so we'll be closing the session. I would like to sincerely thank Professor Maennig for his insightful lecture on the Olympic city selection process. So your expertise on the strategic planning for India has broadened our understanding and sparked meaningful discussions, sir. We are truly grateful for the opportunity to learn from such a distinguished expert in the field, sir. Thank you so much from BCORE and RRU. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.